So today's session is going to be about cycle syncing. And I just wanted to know if how many of you would have heard about this term cycle syncing before this session, before you ever got into this session. If you can show me by show of hands or by dropping in, you can drop your messages in the chat box. Have you heard about cycle syncing before this session came up? Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, for those of you who haven't heard about it, I just did a short poll among my patients in our health group, and more than 70% of them have not heard about this term, cycle syncing. And I'm not surprised about it because this is the larger population and it is a relatively new trend. And the whole point is how much do we need, or how much cycle syncing do we need? How much do we need to know about this? And how much of this do we need to apply in our lives? All right. So for this, okay, most of them have not heard about cycle syncing. So then I'll straight away jump into cycle syncing because most of you have not heard about cycle syncing. I'll start from the basics of it. This is the menstrual cycle. So this menstrual cycle can be divided into phases. That is the follicular phase, ovulation, and luteal phase. All right. I don't want you to get stressed out by the terminologies. It's really not important, but I just want you to understand that there are three major phases within the cycle. Now, this is apart from the menstrual phase, which is before the follicular phase. Apart from that, we have three major phases. And there is one menstrual phase, which most of us are aware of because that's what we see. Whenever we talk about menstruation, we talk about the menstrual phase. But we forget to see that there is a lot happening behind this menstrual phase, that is the follicular phase, the ovulation, and the luteal phase. And all three phases have got their role to play in establishing the health of that particular woman. Now, in these phases, like you see, you can see some dunes and hills and mountains and peaks. No? So these are all the fluctuations of hormones through the cycle. So now that you see here, are you aware that there are two hormones, very important sex steroid hormones in the woman, estrogen and progesterone. So now that you see here, estrogen starts gradually increasing with the cycle. It peaks during ovulation, and then it comes down, and then it slightly increases, and then it again drops down. And then progesterone, the other important hormone, mostly lies dormant during the first phase. After ovulation, it peaks. And if fertilization happens, that is, if pregnancy happens, it continues further to nourish the ovum and goes on like that. Otherwise, it signals a feedback and it drops down. All right. LH and FSH, these two hormones, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, are the ones that stimulate the estrogen and progesterone to function in the way that they do. Okay, so these are the major ups and the downs of the menstrual cycle. So what you need to understand is there are phases in a cycle, periods or menstruation as we know it. Then there is a follicular phase where follicles grow. Then there's ovulation where follicles burst. And then there is a phase called the luteal phase where the follicle prepares, to get shedded along with the endometrium. And in these phases, there are ups and downs of hormones. You have to remember this ups and downs of hormones, estrogen, progesterone, because this is what we're going to learn in today's session. All right. So here, now this is kind of clear. Estrogen comes and goes up, goes down, progesterone goes up, goes down. But this cycle in itself is not normal for everybody. Out of 10 women, at least 2 women have an abnormal cycle. That's one thing. So it's applicable, this is applicable only for eumenoric women, that is women who menstruate regularly. Point number 2, your menstrual cycle has a brain of its own. That is, menstrual cycles basically have a brain, mind, heart, soul of their own. They are very, very, very sensitive. That is, your mood can affect your cycle. If you're sad, it can affect your cycle. If there's been a death in the family, it can affect your cycle. If you have an exam coming up, if you have a major project coming up, it can affect your cycle. If you've traveled a lot, it can affect your cycle. If there's a weather change, it can affect your cycle. If you had a fight with your husband, it can affect your cycle. If you're looking forward to an outing, if you're looking forward to a vacation. If you're looking forward to a vacation, you all will know. If you're looking forward to a vacation, there you're going to get your cycle. So it's like your cycle is listening to all that you want and acting according to it. Yeah. So this up and down, as shown in this graph, can be quite sensitive to different emotions. So again, it is not applicable for everybody. All right. I'll tell you the other issue, the circadian rhythm. When you try to sync your life according to this, there comes the circadian rhythm. You need to have a rhythm that follows the sun and the moon, and into that rhythm, you have to bring this rhythm. And then when you decide what to eat, what not to eat, you just know that there are cycles and seasons, and everybody tells you eat seasonally. Eat what seasonal fruits, eat seasonal vegetables, and then you try and think, okay, this cycle I have to eat this, and then the season doesn't allow it. So I wanted you to know about this particular, I would say, drawback of current day cycle syncing, so that you can understand the benefits of cycle syncing and use it to actually benefit you. So here we will learn about the basics of cycle syncing, so that you do not fall into the trap or do not fall into the exploitation by the industry, commercial industry, but rather you understand cycle syncing, you understand circadian rhythm, you understand seasons, then you fit your menstrual rhythm into it, and then all put together, you are able to use the resources available and not be exploited by it. That is the entire point of this session, and I hope you are able to follow through it. You can ask your doubts at the end of the session, and I will be very happy to help you. So we're going to deal with it under these sections. Now coming to this, these are two different perspectives of a cycle. Image 1 and image 2. How many of you can relate to image 1? When I say periods, how many of you can relate to image 1? Either show of hands or... Okay. Okay. How many of you can relate to image 2? Either you or your mother, sister, girlfriend, wife, anybody. How many of you can relate to image 2? A happy woman happily thinking about this. Day 3 onwards, all right. Okay. On the image 1. All right. Okay. So most people, as far as I see here, as well as in practice, what we see is most women understand, express, and relate to the painful or the troublesome part of menstruation. Very less women are able to accept menstruation as a resource. I'm using the word resource because I would really like to think of it as a gift. Very less women are able to understand and use menstruation as a gift. Now, the whole point of understanding cycle syncing is to be able to know that this is a gift and not a trouble. And that is what I hope that you take home at the end of the session. And this whole syncing is between two hormones, major hormones, estrogen and progesterone. When estrogen and progesterone, they do a dance. And the dance is very, very, very delicate. And with this delicate dance is going smoothly, you get image number 2. And when this delicate dance is kind of, not so delicate, you get image number 1, which is most of the women. All right. Now, there's another concept of cycle syncing where many women get together and sync their cycles and have a period together. That is another idea, but that's not what we're discussing here. I'm just clarifying it for you. It's called the red tent, but that's also a beautiful idea, but we will not be talking about it now. This cycle syncing is about bringing a sync between your circadian rhythm, your seasons, and your estrogen, progesterone, and all the other hormones without getting stressed out by what the market is trying to sell you. Current day market is trying to tell you that you should sync your diet, you should sync your exercise pattern, you should sync your sex life, you should sync your office, your work life, you should sync your social life, everything around this. And most women who are already juggling with a lot of things in their lives, multitaskers themselves, do not find time to sync this too. And as a result, they'll end up getting stressed, thinking they're not doing enough for themselves. And so we are not going to try and stress out about it, but instead we are going to try and learn how to maintain this delicate balance in the body, how to sync these hormones, how to sync their ups and their downs with our body, how to know what is good for you, how to know what is good for them and why it's not good for you, and not get stressed out about it. All right. So for that, I would like to take you through the dimensions of a period. So in a period, you have to understand that in a period, we have we can understand the period in 3 major dimensions. It's a physical dimension is what we see. That is the period proper. So there's an involvement of the ovary, there's involvement of the uterus, there's involvement of the vagina, and then there is blood outside. And like I told you earlier, inside also a lot of functions go on, physical in nature. That is what can be structurally seen. Physiological, when you see, is the ups and downs between the different cycles. That is, estrogen goes up, progesterone goes up, and when estrogen goes up, the brain gives a signal, stop, put it down. And then ovulation happens, and then progesterone rises, and then the brain says enough, shut it down. And when progesterone drops, bleeding starts. So it's a delicate give and take, like a circuit going on in the body. It's called the reproductive neuroendocrinology. That is the reproductive system communicating with the neural system in order to make the endocrine system function. So this is the physiology of it. And then there's a psychological dimension, that is the role of the brain, the mind, and the happy hormones in how the cycle is executed. So here is the basic cycle, your basic cycle, that is the menstrual phase, the follicular phase, the ovulation phase, the luteal phase. All right. Now here, in between the luteal phase and the menstrual phase, you're going to have one more phase where the progesterone starts dropping in. Okay, so these are the different phases. So we can keep adding on to it as in how your body differs. Like for some people, this is a normal cycle, but for some people, the follicular phase doesn't end in ovulation. They don't ovulate. And as a result, they're never going to have this luteal phase. They're just going to continue to have estrogen dominance, and then there's going to be menstruation. For some people, the follicular phase is going to be long. And for some people, menstruation itself is a problem. They don't menstruate enough, or they menstruate, or they have a period for a longer time. So it varies from person to person, but this is your basic menstrual cycle. Now, in the physical part of it, like you see, here is, I hope you clear now with the different terminologies. There is a follicular phase, there's ovulation, and the luteal phase. And in this phase, two different things happen. One is the follicle grows. The follicle grows from a teeny tiny cell. It keeps growing, it becomes big, a Graafian follicle, and then it releases an ovum. And if it gets fertilized, awesome, it goes into a different path. If it doesn't fertilize, what happens is if it doesn't get fertilized, it could go down, it could get fertilized anywhere else in the uterus, leading to complications. Some people have heard of placenta previa and other complications. It could get fertilized down in this near the cervical area. Many complications can happen. So the uterus doesn't allow these complications, and it tries to squeeze everything once fertilization doesn't happen, tries to squeeze everything and throw it out, resulting in menstruation. So this is what happens in the ovary. Okay. And simultaneously, while this is happening, simultaneously, inside the uterus also something's happening. So there is a layer inside the uterus. So there is a uterus, and inside the uterus there is a layer, and it keeps growing slowly, preparing for a pregnancy. So there is a proliferative phase, and then there is a secretory phase, and then there is bleeding. If fertilization happens, this ovum comes and sits inside the secretory endometrium, and then it grows into a fetus or a conceptus, as you see. If not, all of it will collapse and start bleeding. So this is the physical part of it. Physiological part of it, like we discussed earlier, is what we don't see. That is the reproductive neuroendocrinology. This is what we know is there is estrogen, progesterone. We know this part, the ovary part. But behind the ovary part, there are some structures in the brain, that is hypothalamus and the pituitary. These are small things. See, it's actually literally this small. They're sitting in the brain and they're sending signals to the pituitary. And the pituitary is sending signal to the gonads, that is the ovaries, and telling them, you release this, you release this, it's time to shut this down, it's time to, shut this one down and increase this one, it's time to ovulate, it's time to bleed. All of these things are signaled by the brain, by a small structure, a couple of small structures sitting in the brain. Now, are you able to see that it is a very, very complex network of different kinds of signals running around in the body? Are you able to understand that the menstrual cycle is not restricted to your ovary? It's not a disease, or it's not a function of the ovary or the uterus or some organ sitting in the pelvic area, but it is a function dominated by the brain and executed by the ovary, and with its function seen all over the body. Now, meanwhile, I also want you to see, I have mentioned something called the adrenal glands. These are two structures sitting on top of your kidney, which are so small, but they respond to your fight and flight mechanism. So this entire network of hypothalamus, pituitary, gonads, and adrenals, they all function together like a team of people sitting together in an office, functioning. Each one has something or the other to do, and when everything comes together, everything is beautiful. When everything doesn't come together, it's a mess. And this delicate network requires a lot of initiation and a lot of work from your end. But in today's era, how many of you are able to give this kind of attention? Forget the menstrual cycle, anything at all in your life. Now, coming to the psychological aspect, this is something that nobody talks about. Everybody knows about it. Even when we are as students studying the menstrual cycle, teaching the menstrual cycle, it's always about the physiology, the anatomy. Nobody talks about the psychological aspect because nobody wanted to believe that women's psychology is so deeply connected to her menstruation. It is so deeply connected to the menstruation that these hormones are able to influence your all have hormones that contribute to happiness, serotonin, oxytocin, melatonin, norepinephrine, all of them, they are able to influence them. And these happy hormones are able to influence these hormones. And this balance is usually a difficult task to attain, which is which is why women are complex organisms, I would say. Most conditions, in statistics, in statistical studies done on gynecological diseases, it is shown that long-standing gynecological diseases have reflected some kind of psychiatric disorder. And psychiatric disorders, also newly found psychiatric disorders, may have an association with a gynecological disorder, and both of them are independently occurring without any previous history. So there is a deep connection between these hormones, and any disturbance in these hormones is going to affect the cycle. All right. Now, why I want you to know all of these things is for you to understand that the menstrual cycle is not restricted to the ovaries, and that is why when we talk about syncing your cycle, we are not syncing it to the organs there, but we are syncing it to the impact that this reproductive system has on your entire body. We are trying to sync this menstrual cycle to different functions of your body. We are trying to sync it to your mood. We are trying to sync it to your diet. We are trying to sync it to your lifestyle. We are trying to sync it to the way how you feel mindfully. Okay, I hope you're following this. Now coming to the impact of hormones. Now that you know about the different stages of a menstrual cycle and the different role played by different systems in the menstrual cycle, I want to bring your attention to the role played by these hormones on the body. All of you might be knowing that they have certain functions in fertility. You know that, right? Ovulation, implantation, all these things. That is familiar part. We leave that. We're not looking at that now. But look at the different functions done by these hormones on your other body systems. They do a musculoskeletal, that is, they impact how your bone strength is. They impact how your muscle strength is. They impact how your heart pumps blood. They impact how your arteries clog, there is fat deposition. They impact that. They impact the function of your adrenal hormones, that is, like we saw there, HPO, HPA axis. So these gonads, if the ovaries have some issue, it is going to impact your adrenal glands as well. There is an impact on the skin and the hair. There is impact on fat metabolism. There is impact on renal functions, endocrine systems, immune system also. So these hormones have their impact all over the body. They have the impact everywhere. They basically show their influence in every body system. This you can understand with this image here. Effects of estrogen, if you see, if you're aware of the hormone estrogen, then you may know. What do you know about the hormone estrogen, by the way? Anything? Does anybody know anything about the hormone estrogen? Okay, the most common understanding among people is it's a sex hormone. That is, it makes women become womanly. Now, how it does that? Of course, it does that, but it also does other functions. That is, it helps the brain in functioning, heart function, ovary function, vagina, uterus, bone. It does a lot of functions. And guess what? Progesterone is the mother of all these hormones. And this particular hormone, progesterone, is derived from cholesterol. So the more amount of healthy fats you have, it's going to impact the progesterone estrogen balance in the body. So it's for you to understand that the hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are not restricted to the uterus alone, but they have their impact all over the body. Okay. So up till now, what we saw is that the menstrual cycle has different phases. The different phases have different association of hormones. The different hormones have their functions in different parts of the body. All right. So when we are talking about menstruation, we are not talking about periods. We are talking about periods and everything else around it. So if a man is able to get up in the morning today, go to the office and do his work, come back, get tired, eat and sleep, a woman will also do that, but she will She will not feel the same every day. She will feel differently in different phases of the cycle. She will feel differently, not in the pelvis, that is not in the ovary or the uterus, but she will feel differently in her skin. She'll feel differently in her hair. She will feel differently in the way she speaks. She will feel differently in the way she looks at her partner. She will feel differently in the way she interacts with her friend. She will feel differently in the way she travels. She will feel differently in every aspect because these hormones have an impact everywhere in her life. That is what we learned in the past few sessions. Though it was a little bit of information overload, I hope you get the takeaway points from this slide. All right. Now we're going, once you understand this, once you understand that the menstrual cycle has 4 different segments, and once you understand that each segment has an up and a down and an up and a down, you should know that it is a rhythm. And this rhythm, like I said, with all those complicated terminologies, hypothalamus, pituitary, ovary, all that put together, this rhythm has a lot of people participating in it. Lot of elements participating in it. And when all of them come together, you have a normal cycle. There is a normal rhythm. And these normal rhythms have ups and downs, but they don't affect normal life functions. They are very, very, very delicate. Which is why even eating out continuously can affect your cycle. Partying for 3-4 days continuously can affect your cycle, 3-4 nights continuously. Not sleeping for a day also can impact your cycle. Going for a trip and coming back can push your cycle by a few days. That is why, because it's a delicate balance. And when this balance is disturbed, what you get is an abnormal cycle, a dysfunctional response, a long-standing up, estrogen dominance, or a long-standing down, low progesterone. And all of this is going to affect your life functions. And today there is a higher incidence of these things. You think about the reasons. The reasons are many. And maybe we can use cycle syncing a little bit to understand and implement and reduce the incidence of these abnormalities. The numbers that I've put here, 76.9% of global incidence of people who have gynecological disorders or menstrual disorders. In India, it's 85 to 93.4% more than the incidence globally. 85 to 93.4% in India, people have issues with menstruation. A country which has always had some kind of, the civilization which has always had some kind of pattern around their menstruation, is now reporting a whopping 93.4% abnormalities. What is wrong here? 49% of adolescents complaining of issues of this sort. Now, can we use a natural function like cycle syncing without getting stressed out further and adding to the stress to help in this process? Okay. Are you clear with this? This one. All right. Okay. All right. So once we've understood this, we have to go into how to understand your cycle power and how to use it. So I like to, we generally learn it under 3 sections. That is, or learn and understand it under 3 sections: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 being your proliferative phase or the follicular phase. Oh no, phase 1 being your menstrual phase, phase 2 being your proliferative and follicular phase, and phase 3 being your luteal phase. All right. So phase 1 is this, okay? The menstruation, the one in the pink. This is phase 1. So now an average of 5 to 3, from 3 days up to 5 days can be considered as normal, maybe till up to 7 days, maybe. So in this menstruation phase, you know what happens? What happens? Menstruation happens. Bleeding happens. Okay? And bleeding, there is actual breakdown of tissues. Like I said earlier, there is a layer within the uterus which builds up, becomes thick, breaks down, and falls. So there is actual bleeding. Tissues come out, blood comes out, iron, there's loss of iron and minerals in the body. So it is a stage where there is a breakdown. where there is shedding, where there is bleeding. All right. And in this phase, naturally, you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel exhausted, you're going to have some kind of discomforts, cramps, you're going to feel, you're not going to feel in the energy, in the mood to be able to do a lot of things. So this is the phase where you harness the power of your cycle by resting, relaxing, rejuvenating, and introspecting. All right. Now come to the phase 2, which is the follicular phase or the proliferative phase. That is where proliferation happens. Proliferation is growth, little by little growth of the cells. So here the lining begins to thicken, and then when it starts thickening, what is going to happen is estrogen is going to peak. And estrogen is a hormone which is like a young woman, like a young girl in her teens. It's a happy hormone. It literally makes everything look and seem nice. It makes the body supple. It makes your skin nice. It makes your hair nice. It makes you feel good. It makes your appetite increase. Metabolism improves. You feel nice. Estrogen is like that happy-go-lucky little girl, and it makes everything nice. So when everything is nice, what do you feel like? You feel like getting a bit creative. You feel like new plans come into your mind. You're able to make new plans. You're able to lead your team. You're able to work most efficiently. You're able to execute your work most efficiently. And you become the social butterfly. It's a great time to go out, meet people, make your own team. It's a great time to sign up new projects. Then comes ovulation. So this is the ovulation. It usually lasts over a few days, where there's a peak of estrogen, peak of testosterone, and then LH comes, and then there is ovulation. So estrogen and testosterone together make an amazing pair, because testosterone is also a power hormone. So when these two come together, your libido is at a high. You want to have sex. You want to go interact with people. Basically, because we are human beings, our genes want us to procreate. So we are in that, zone to make the best happen out of our life. We are entirely confident about our sexuality, confident about our body, and all good to go in that time. So ovulation, there is a lot of things that you can do that you did during your previous cycle in a much better way. Then comes the next phase, which is the luteal phase. In this phase, what happens is, if ovulation happens and fertilization doesn't happen, then everything comes collapsing. And in that time, before the collapsing, when the collapsing happens, in the uterus, it is still preparing for the egg to come. So it is a phase where a lot of water accumulates. What do you do when a woman is preparing to become a mother? What happens? She stores everything. There is a lot of storage of fat. There is a storage of water. There is a storage of minerals. A storage of everything. She stores everything in the body. So in that phase, the body tends to become heavy, bloated. You feel dull. You may not be in the energy to do a lot of work. So in this phase, you can just sit back and compile whatever you have done. Probably get a little bit of analytical. You can use all your work. You can conclude sessions. You can delegate work. You can reflect on yourself. And this is where you should take plenty of me time. Now, I've used the word harness here because if you use your cycle in this pattern over a period of time, what you get are cycles which are repeatedly productive. As if I'm going to deliver this session, and if I know a month before, or if I know a few days beforehand, I would try my best to do it during my proliferative phase or during my ovulatory phase, and not keep it till my luteal phase. And if I'm getting this project to do during my luteal phase, I would know that my body is not in the zone to do so. So I would prepare my body accordingly so that I get my work done during this luteal phase. Repeatedly using this body, we are having menstruation since menarche. We repeatedly menstruate. So if we are mindful, we can understand our body in such a way that we put everything into use. A successful phase 2 and phase 3 by relaxing in phase 1. Relax during your menstrual phase. Get pumped up during your follicular phase and ovulatory phase. Wind up everything during your luteal phase and chill. All right. So once you know this, Once you know this, you can use your diet and lifestyle to go around it. But the modern day, like for instance, whatever is available on the internet is mostly information given by people who have tried it by themselves, but not really scientifically backed up. Like using artichokes or goji berries. How many people, how many of us can go get them in the market? It's not really possible. So, but what you can do is use your own diet to help your life. For the first thing is establish your circadian rhythm. Eat properly. Always nutritional diet is standard. There is, if you should have a normal diet, a good diet all the time. There is no exception, and you cannot freshly do it during your cycle. You should always have a good diet. You should always have a healthy lifestyle. For people who have a constantly healthy diet and a constantly healthy lifestyle, this will apply. You can use techniques to help your cycle. That is, once you have an established diet and once you have an established lifestyle, then you can use your logic regarding the phases to apply for your food. In the menstrual phase, your hormones at lowest, appetite is low, everything is low, strength is low, you don't want to eat too much. So you have to eat something which is easy to metabolize, quickly nourishing. Khichdis are a good choice. Kheer is a good choice. Having fresh juice is a good choice. During the follicular phase, you want to reproduce. Your cells are constantly trying to reproduce. In this phase, your meals should be wholesome, varied. You have to include all kinds of food groups, rice, dals, fruits, vegetables, primarily gourd vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, all kinds of vegetables. You have to go for as much variety as possible. During the ovulatory phase, you have to go for a fat-rich diet, healthy fat-rich diet, because you're trying to release an ovum. There is going to be a peak in estrogen. During the luteal phase, you have to calm down because your body is already storing a lot. If in this phase, if you go give it a, like this PMS, you go give it a brownie or a muffin, it is going to further mess up your cycle. This is the phase where you have to go for a low glycemic index diet. Millets are a good choice in this particular phase. Now that you understand the menstrual cycle in different phases, the follicular phase as the exciting, jumpy, happy phase, luteal phase as the quiet, relaxing, and calming down phase, menstrual phase as the resting phase, and ovulation phase as the phase where your libido and your moods are high. Can you tell me which phase would be the best phase to do yoga? Can you put it in the chat, anybody? Which phase would be the best phase? Luteal phase? Yes. Luteal phase 2? Yes. And all. Yoga is, if you are a person who does yoga regularly, yes, if you are a person who does yoga regularly, it suits all phases. But predominantly light yoga is good for menstrual phase as well as the luteal phase. Light yoga. When I say light yoga during menstrual phase, is not meant for ulta pulta or chakrasana and all that. Meditation, light stretching. That's it. Next, can you tell me which phase would be the best to do a Zumba? Go out and dance with your friends, or do aerobics, or Zumba fight, or go for a hike. Which phase would be the best to do that? Follicular. Awesome, awesome. Okay, because I can't see you guys, I really didn't know how much you were listening to, but awesome. Great, follicular. Next, which would be the best phase to do some strength training and weight? Not to be able to lift some weights and do some strength training, some Pilates, to be able to stretch your body. Which doesn't involve too much of social interaction. You just go to cult or you go to any gym, lift that weight, do it by yourself, come back. Which phase would be yes, the luteal phase. Amazing. I'm so proud of you all. I'm so proud. Great. Okay. And which would be the best phase to have some real good sex? Ovulation phase. Ovulation phase. Yes. All right. So I'm sure you all get the point behind this. Yes, very good. So the point is the follicular phase and the ovulation phase, you get all nice and exciting and be your best self. Luteal phase, introspect, go through that session of introspection, see what you have done, prepare for your menstruation, get ready for that. And menstrual phase, take some good rest, relax, rejuvenate, and get back with all of your full power back in your follicular phase. It's a good phase. You get a solid 10 days there to get a lot of work done. And that is basically what is intended out of cycle syncing. It is not something that you do to stress yourself further in your already stressed life, because stress messes up with the HPO axis. Stress messes here, and stress messes your ovaries from here to ovaries, and from ovaries, estrogen messes your entire system. You become old suddenly, your hair starts falling, your breasts feel heavy, you feel fat in the abdomen. All of these things happen because of stress. So don't add cycle syncing to your stress baggage. Use it to your advantage. Okay, and tailor your life and plan your period. Stop cribbing and start planning. Understand what is right. You've already understood it now. Understand what is right for you. You may not be eumenoric. You may not be menstruating regularly. Check how your body is responding and use this for yourself. Identify your existing health issues, correct them. Don't live with your painful period. Don't live with your heavy bloated breasts. Don't live with your hair fall. Don't live with them. Correct them. Apply knowledge one day at a time. Don't start cycle syncing immediately. Start with your menstrual phase. Start resting during your menstrual phase. Start small. Start with one small step and slowly implement them into your life. And while you do that, you will understand what is good for you and what is not. And for everything else, you have people like me who are into integrative medicine to guide you. Discuss your periods with your friends, with people who are knowledgeable about it, and document. Journal, document, write it down, track your periods, and see how good you feel in different phases of your cycle.